Now, it's common sentiment that the Denver Broncos sold their soul to win Super Bowl 50. I don't believe that. Peyton Manning died for our sins. That's what I believe, and just like Jesus before him, we have let our Savior down. What I do think is that Denver hung on to that Super Bowl winning formula for far too long and were too proud to tear it down and start over. It's incredible what the Broncos did in 2015, and part of what makes that championship so special and so unique was that they won games via an elite defense, special teams, and the very skin of their teeth. That skin now available for purchase in Colorado Walmarts. It was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of team, and trying to recapture that magic instead of reshaping their philosophy was a mistake. This team was never in need of a Band-Aid. It needed a full reconstructive surgery, and we're finally coming face to face with that ugly-ass truth. And along the way, Denver has made mistake after mistake after mistake that has sunken them deeper into the NFL abyss with every passing year. They've made blunders at every level, from free agency, trades, the draft, and picking their head coaches. Some of the decisions I defended at the time. Some seemed like small blunders, but stacked up over the course of 7 years, it's like we're staring at an Eiffel Tower-sized collection of wrong moves. And we, the fans, we're the base of that Eiffel Tower, if you know what I mean. Today, I'm going to recap every major wrong decision the Broncos have made since winning the Super Bowl, some I'm sure you've forgotten, and reveal how it takes a multitude of decisions to go from a perennially good organization to literally the worst in the league. Today, we go balls deep into bad decisions. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, and if you're feeling dead inside because of the Broncos, don't forget I got these shirts available, link in the description. 2016, the retirement of Peyton Manning was followed by the surprise move of Brock Osweiler going to Houston. A wrong move by Brock, nonetheless. But his departure left the Broncos in a precarious situation at quarterback following Super Bowl 50. Denver had a 7th-round pick in Trevor Siemian, who had taken all of 1 snap in his career. They had just signed Mark Sanchez, but they needed a quarterback of the future, and they had their eyes on a couple of players. One was Mississippi State's Dak Prescott. The other guy was a tall, milky white specimen from Memphis who liked to dab and had a strange Pirates goatee. Now, Denver was supposed to have dinner with Dak Prescott, but he missed a flight, and they ended up taking Paxton Lynch instead. And they didn't just draft him, they moved up in the 1st round to do so. Not only did the Broncos miss out on a Pro Bowl quarterback in Prescott, they picked Lynch 1 slot ahead of 2-time Pro Bowler Kenny Clark and 11 picks ahead of another Mississippi State Bulldog defensive tackle Chris Jones, who almost certainly would have been a 1st rounder had his penis not flopped out at the combine.
Ooh. Wow.
Now, I've done a Paxton Lynch video, and one about the Chiefs wanting to draft Paxton Lynch, but they didn't have the ammo to trade up and get him because they were docked draft picks for tampering with Jeremy Maclin. Imagine if Denver had nabbed Chris Jones and then Patrick Mahomes went somewhere else, or even to Denver. Lynch started just 4 games for the Broncos over 2 years before they released him. Good Lord, I can't believe he was really going to be a worthy successor to Peyton Manning. Lynch has since been benched in the CFL and the USFL. Now, something that gets lost with Paxton Lynch is that head coach Gary Kubiak at the time did not want to draft him. John Elway did. Kubiak was fine, rolling with Trevor Siemian, and it's incredibly dumb to force a quarterback upon the coach who was just instrumental in helping your team win a Super Bowl. Kubiak ultimately stepped away from the team, citing health reasons in 2017, but most believe that was he and Elway agreeing to separate. John not listening to Gary Kubiak there was a massive mistake. 2 years after they drafted Paxton Lynch, Denver held the 5th overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, and they still needed a quarterback. Even though they had signed a stopgap option
Case Keesum
to a 2-year, $36 million deal. There was some that thought that Denver might trade up to take Sam Darnold. So I guess we dodged a bullet there.
Seeing ghosts.
But the focus was on Wyoming QB Josh Allen, who John Elway had personally gone to see play in a bowl game where Allen had thrown for 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. And there were a lot of people in Denver and Denver media that wanted Josh Allen to be drafted by the Broncos. So that it was a real scenario that could have happened. Now, Allen was definitely a project, but the raw arm strength and Cam Newton level mobility gave him a very high ceiling if they could just iron out some of the accuracy issues. It seemed from the outside that the Paxton Lynch disaster, though, scared John Elway off from drafting another quarterback like that. And he opted to go with NC State pass rusher Bradley Chubb instead. Now, at the time, nobody could believe Chubb fell to the Broncos at 5. And with that 2015 defense still in view, still in memory, I was happy with the pick. I didn't want a quarterback in that draft. Chubb was a good, sometimes great player in Denver when healthy, recording 12 sacks as a rookie. But a good pass rusher does not equal the contributions of a great quarterback. It's crazy a former NFL QB didn't see that. Buffalo was patient enough to develop Josh Allen, live with the couple rough seasons, and watch him blossom into a top 5 QB in the league. Opting for an edge rusher when you actually do not have a franchise QB is like opting for a root canal when you need a fucking brain tumor removed. And they had a guy in Shaq Barrett at edge who would have been fine playing opposite Von Miller. In fact, a year later, Shaq wanted out because he wasn't going to get starting reps above Bradley Chubb, and he went on to have a 19.5 sack season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another bad decision. But between 2016 and 2021, Denver employed Mark Sanchez, Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, and Teddy Bridgewater, aka Teddy Roosevelt. These were 4 stopgap options that the Broncos thought could be good enough to ride a solid defense into the postseason. Sanchez didn't even make the Week 1 roster. Case Keenum went 6-10, throwing 15 interceptions in 2018. Joe Flacco was still in his prime, according to John Elway, but won just 2 of his 8 starts and threw just 6 touchdowns in the process. Teddy Bridgewater might have been the best of them, winning half of his starts, but still squandered a defense that allowed the 3rd fewest points in the league. Teddy made a business decision and a couple weeks later tried to make up for it and ended his time in Denver with a concussion, which Teddy later said really helped me forget my time in Denver. The problem with all of these signings is that they would have been okay, they would have been fine if they were brought in as bridge QBs to also mentor a first-round pick, but they weren't. The closest to that was Joe Flacco with Drew Lock, but he openly stated he was not there to help Drew Lock develop. It wasn't his job. Drew Lock was also a wrong pick, obviously. Not from the 2019 draft, but because Denver got trapped into trying to find QBs in the wrong drafts. Because they had Lock, they weren't looking at 2020 for QB prospects like Jordan Love and, damn it, Jalen Hurts, who would have been available when the Broncos were drafting. The Broncos kept acting like they could find a seasoned veteran to play game manager while the defense did the heavy lifting. But they quickly learned that that kind of approach wasn't going to work in a division with names like Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. Not only that, though, they kept paying guys like Joe Flacco and Case Keenum massive amounts of money to not be the guy. They needed a Ryan Fitzpatrick type, not a vet past his prime who wanted to be overpaid and not mentor guys, or a guy trying to get paid after a miraculous season. But of all the blunders on this list, 'twas a coaching decision, not a QB decision, that was the worst of them all. It's not just that the Broncos made the wrong hire, they did, but they passed up on a guy who had literally come of age in the Broncos organization, and they did it for a dumb reason, an ancient blood feud between Broncos VP Joe Ellis and former head coach Mike Shanahan, Kyle's dad. One of the greatest villains in Broncos history when we look back upon it just might be Joe Ellis. Now, I am, of course, talking about the team hiring Vance Joseph instead of Kyle Shanahan. After Gary Kubiak's retirement following the 2016 season, Denver did actually bring in Kyle Shanahan for an interview after his incredible season calling plays for the Falcons, helping Matt Ryan win MVP, but it was all a formality. Shanahan later said that he never thought he was going to get the job, despite actually being in the room with Ellis and Elway. Oh yeah, and another guy they didn't even think to interview was a kid named Sean McVay. But the Broncos have had a real problem identifying the right available talent. And it's been at every single fucking level. Denver instead opted to hire a mediocre at best defensive coordinator in Vance Joseph, who won just 11 games over 2 seasons for Denver, which, believe it or not, was more than Kyle Shanahan at the time. Shanahan has gone on to lead the 49ers to a Super Bowl appearance, 3 NFC title games, and is generally regarded as the best offensive mind in football. And if it's not him, it's now his understudy, Mike McDaniel. Denver also didn't interview Mike McDaniel. They decided to hire Nathaniel Hackett instead. But before Hackett, they hired Bears defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio wasn't necessarily the wrong hire in that coaching cycle, but he was 100% the wrong head coach to develop Drew Lock. You cannot hire a stubborn old man who only focuses on defense and ask him to mold a raw young QB with a bad offensive coordinator like Pat You Should Be in Prison Shermer. Vic never gave Lock a chance. He wouldn't even acknowledge Lock's birthday.
Very pleased with Teddy's play. And today's Teddy's birthday, so wish him happy birthday.
Vic, you're at 29 sacks allowed this year.
Drew Lock's birthday, too. It is Drew's.
But wait, here's a mistake everyone forgets. Hell, I forgot until I was about 75% done editing this video. Before Shermer, they hired Rich Scangarello as the OC with head coach Vic Fangio. And when Drew Lock took over for an injured Joe Flacco, he played very well in Scangarello's offense. It's why we were excited for Drew Lock's sophomore season. People forget, we thought he was going to be very good because he played some pretty damn good football that season with Scangarello. But maybe in the dumbest move possible, Vic Fangio essentially told Elway he wanted Scangarello gone because Vic couldn't be bothered to put any focus on the offense. He needed a seasoned OC to run that half of the game, and Rich was not perfect. But removing him and that Shanahan style of offense for Pat Shermer is why Drew Lock should sue the Broncos for ruining his development.
We did a drill today where we were actually trying to throw incompletions.
When you think about Robert Saleh, DeMeco Ryans, Mike McDaniel, credit the Broncos for being the one team to get the wrong dude from the tree when they actually might have had one of the right dudes and fired him anyway. The Broncos exercised patience with Fangio, giving him 3 seasons before firing him after the 2021 season. While all the coaches and QB decisions were wrong, so were the numerous free agent decisions in that time. I'm just going to read off some names that the Broncos have given money to in free agency that did not work. Randy Gregory, 5 years, $70 million, played 6 games, traded to San Francisco for pennies. It wasn't just that they paid Gregory, it's that they chose him over Von Miller, who, yes, got more money to go to Buffalo, but wanted to come home and was also much better until he got hurt in Buffalo. Kyle Fuller, 1 year, $9.5 million, 16 games, and burned in almost all of them. Donald Stevenson, 3 years, $14 million, started 16 games at right tackle. Menelik Watson, 3 years, $18 million, started 7 games at right tackle. And of course, Jawan James, who joined Denver on a 4-year, $52 million deal and played in just 3 games, opting out of the COVID season in 2020 and tearing his Achilles away from the team facility before the 2021 season. That's hundreds of millions of dollars for literally nothing in return. Better than billions, though. Right, Walmart? Right? Denver's 2023 free agent class is not off to a great start either. Mike McGlinchey has struggled outside of the San Francisco offense, and guard Ben Powers is getting outshined by Quinn Miners on the other side. And Frank Clark was released after he took a pay cut so the team could trade him. But they couldn't trade him. Maybe one of their biggest non-quarterback whiffs in the draft was talented but injured tight end Jake Butt. Remember the Jake Butt pick? They drafted Jake Butt 1 pick ahead of George Kittle. That's really all I need to say about that, isn't it?
Oh, he's got lightheaded.
Denver's 2017 draft might be their worst draft ever. The rest of the 2017 draft, Carlos Henderson, Brendan Langley, Isaiah McKenzie, D'Angelo Henderson, Chad Kelly. I'm going to throw the fuck up now. Chad Kelly was Mr. Irrelevant in that draft class, and honestly, could have been a Brock Purdy type steal, but he was released after he broke into a home that wasn't his on Halloween dressed like Woody from Toy Story, while the owner of the home chased him out of the house with a vacuum cleaner. Sadly, blackout drunk Chad Kelly in a Toy Story Halloween costume is how I feel this organization is run. We are run by a drunk Woody. Now let me zero in on Nathaniel Hackett over not even talking to Mike McDaniel.
Saying I have to be a Denver Bronco football player. I cannot, my life will not be successful if I don't play professionally.
Two kind of weird personalities, two player coaches, and the Broncos picked the wrong one. The really wrong one. Nathaniel Hackett was a hot prospect after being the de facto OC for Aaron Rodgers, leading him to back-to-back MVPs, while Mike McDaniel was the de facto offensive coordinator for Kyle Shanahan, which seemed like the easiest job in the world, but it turned out he was pretty damn bright in his own regard. Now I can forgive the Broncos for, say, not hiring Mike McDaniel. Remember, there was a chance Aaron Rodgers would come to Denver with Nathaniel Hackett, but also Mike was really inexperienced. You would be taking a swing with him, you would. And it's why he landed in Miami, a place nobody really wanted to go. What I cannot forgive is not even talking to him. You cannot identify that someone is special if you're too fucking dense to even interview them. Mike McDaniel repaid the favor though by hanging 70 on the Broncos.
You can kiss him goodbye.
And Denver lost in humiliating fashion to their former ball boy and former head coach Vic Fangio. I think what hurts the most about passing on McDaniel is seeing how dynamic and innovative his offense is compared to Denver's. It's almost like they're playing a different sport there in Miami. You see the motion used to their advantage, the yards after catch, and the creative play design in the red zone, something I haven't seen done in Denver since before Peyton Manning was hurt. Tua and Brian Flores infamously butted heads, but McDaniel connected with him and unlocked his full potential as a point guard in the league's quickest offense.
Thank you for showing me the respect and regard. I'll do the same.
Now back to quarterback.
Let's ride.
No, not Russell Wilson yet. You're forgetting about Justin Fields. The Broncos GM is currently George Paton.
Hey, Broncos country.
Let's ride.
John Elway handpicked George Paton as his predecessor. Both Elway and Paton have made terrible decisions in free agency. Elway gets more heat for not drafting well. You know, he missed on Josh Allen, didn't even think about Lamar Jackson, and of course going back to the well for Drew Lock. George Paton, in his last season with the Vikings, did help the team draft Justin Jefferson. And I'm starting to think that the altitude here in Denver makes smart men dumb. Because the Justin Jefferson draft pick is one of the best draft picks of the last, 5 years. In his first draft, though, with the Broncos, Denver was sitting at spot 9. Justin Fields fell to them. George Paton selected corner Patrick Surtain. Yes, Surtain thus far is a better corner than Fields has been at quarterback. But if this team had Justin Fields, they would not have traded for Russell Wilson. They would have kept all of those key draft picks and quite possibly built a good team around Justin Fields, who had his best passing day of his career against the Broncos' deplorable defense. And looking at this 2021 draft, all of those first 5 picks are starters, good ones too. Stearns currently injured, and Jonathan Cooper in round 7 is insane value, but George Paton, in my opinion, does know how to draft. Hiring Hackett, the Russ trade, and the other free agent whiffs are what he's known for and are problems. But if his focus is more on the draft and they figure out free agency, I like him staying if that's what he's zeroed in on. It's far less painful to swing and miss on a first-round quarterback than it is to trade for one and miss on a guy like Russell Wilson or even overpay one like Flacco. Jerry Jeudy was the highest drafted receiver by the Broncos ever. And while Jerry Jeudy has been great at times, he's about to get traded. But here we are, Russell Wilson, the big one. It's unfair to pin all of the struggles on Russell Wilson, the player, because he was saddled with the worst head coach in the last decade, and now he's saddled with the worst defense perhaps of all time. No, we're not gonna do it. The Broncos sent a king's ransom to the Seahawks for Russell Wilson in the spring of 2022. Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant, 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and a 5th-round pick. It would have been irrelevant what Seattle had done with those picks if Denver was winning, if they were a playoff team, but they're certainly not. And seeing the Seahawks snatch up players like Charles Cross, Boye Mafe, and Devin Witherspoon has been a real slap in the face, while Denver is one of the most talent-deficient teams in the NFL right now. Then you have the albatross of a contract that the Broncos gave Wilson before he ever took a snap in Denver. 5 years, $245 million. We're not even a year and a half into that deal, and people are already looking to get out of it, while the Broncos are bad enough to draft someone like Caleb Williams or Drake May or, I don't know, Michael Penix at the top of the first round in 2024. Everything with Wilson, though, is a facade. He was playing pretty good football this season, and then he was terrible against the Chiefs. Even when Russell Wilson is very good, he gets cold and has a bad quarter or two. The simplest truth about Russ, which George Paton should have identified, is he cannot win without an elite roster around him. And by giving away an asinine amount of draft capital and paying him a dumb amount of new money, you hinder your ability to put that roster around him. Russ did expose an even bigger lie, though, that the Broncos had a great roster, simply missing a QB. Investing in a good, not great quarterback while the rest of the team is falling apart is not a sound roster building strategy. If he's the guy you drafted and then you have to pay him, you can live with that. But giving up the picks like Denver did and then paying Russ will be one of the worst decisions any team has made for decades to come. And actually, other teams should be paying us for showing them just how bad of an idea this is. Finally, here we are, Sean Payton. Denver gave up another first-round pick for former Saints head coach Sean Payton, who's off to a 1-5 start in his tenure. Oh, and there's a second rounder in there too somewhere. Sean Payton start worse than Hackett, worse than Fangio, and worse than Vance Joseph, by the way. You could argue that pick was house money considering they got it from the Bradley Chubb trade mid-season in 2022, but it's also worth pointing out that their defense has sharply declined since moving Chubb, and that there were players on the board that the Broncos could have used, Joey Porter Jr. and Sam Laporta, just to name a couple names that were selected within the next 6 picks. I don't think anyone will regret giving up picks for Sean Payton if he turns it around and builds a winner with the next few seasons, and it's going to take that amount of time. But Denver and its ownership seemed hell-bent on using that cash, that Walmart cash that was burning a hole in their pocket and their stadium, and it's fair to wonder if Payton, seeing that immense payday, might have blinded him from the fact that this organization lacked a lot of vital resources. At this point, we probably would have been better off targeting a first-time head coach like Shane Steichen, who's overachieving in Indy right now, running a successful offense with 2 very different quarterbacks, and Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew until they play the Jags, amidst a running back holdout. Look, every general manager makes mistakes. They make a wrong choice. Every sport, every team has a bad pick. A bad one in the first, or miss on a quarterback, but good ownership /GM/head coach combos rectify it. The 49ers did it after Trey Lance. The Eagles did it after paying Carson Wentz. Seattle knew it was time to move on from Russ. The Broncos had misses like all other teams, but they never corrected any of them. Every plan to correct the previous failure was just another failure. It snowballed. It's wrong moves within wrong moves. For example, Nathaniel Hackett comes in and gets rid of Mike Munchak, our very good offensive line coach that the Broncos were able to lure away from Pittsburgh. Sean Payton comes in and they make no effort to make Ejiro Evero feel welcome, and he leaves for Carolina. Evero had the defense playing well. Furthermore, they get rid of Evero only to bring back Vance Joseph, which leads us to having the worst fucking defense in the league. It's like each of these new regimes came in and got rid of the only thing that was working before they got there. And right now, we really don't know if ownership is good. We don't know if general manager George Paton is good. We don't know if Sean Payton is good. We do know Russ is not good enough to elevate this team. And he's probably not good enough to continue to justify his contract. Sean Payton may be doing something very smart and evaluating young players right now. He may not be trying that hard to win. And if he and ownership are committed to a rebuild, a full-on rebuild, then he's finally doing the thing this team desperately needs. Suck, then suck even harder, and go get your young QB and build around that man. And those are all of the terrible decisions the Broncos have made that have led to them being one of the worst, if not the worst teams in the league. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here. Been a while since we got a balls deep episode out, but this season's been wild for all the wrong reasons.